be happy alone, because your best life begins the moment you stop depending on people for your peace. My beloved brothers and sisters, many of us fear being alone, not because solitude is painful, but because we have been taught to attach our happiness to others. We look for validation, attention, and emotional support from people, and when they are not there, we feel empty. But Islam teaches us something deeper. You were never meant to depend on people for your inner peace. Your heart was created to find comfort in Allah. When you learn to sit with yourself, reflect, and turn to Allah sincerely, you begin to discover a calmness that no one can take away. Being alone is not loneliness. It is an opportunity to reconnect with your soul and with your Creator. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. Many people confuse being alone with being lonely, but these are not the same thing. Loneliness is a feeling of emptiness, a sense that something is missing within you. Being alone, on the other hand, is simply a state where you are by yourself. My dear brothers and sisters, you can be surrounded by many people and still feel lonely, and you can be alone and feel completely at peace. The difference lies in what your heart is connected to. When your heart depends on people for comfort, being alone feels heavy. But when your heart is connected to Allah, being alone becomes peaceful and meaningful. Loneliness often comes from expecting others to fill an emotional space that only Allah can fill. You look for constant attention, understanding, or reassurance from people, and when it is not there, the heart begins to feel empty. But Allah never created people to carry that responsibility fully. When you shift your focus from people to Allah, you begin to feel a calmness that does not depend on anyone else's presence. Being alone gives you the opportunity to reconnect with yourself. In the noise of daily life, it is easy to lose awareness of your thoughts, your intentions, and your direction. Solitude allows you to reflect, to think clearly, and to understand yourself better. These moments of reflection are valuable for personal and spiritual growth. When you are comfortable being alone, your relationship with Allah becomes stronger. You begin to speak to Him more through dua, remember Him through dhikr, and feel His presence in your quiet moments. This connection fills your heart with peace that replaces the feeling of loneliness. Another important lesson is that being alone protects you from unnecessary emotional harm. When you constantly surround yourself with people, you may become affected by their behavior, their opinions, and their expectations. But solitude allows you to step back and protect your inner peace. Being alone also teaches independence. You learn how to manage your emotions without relying on others to fix them. This independence builds emotional strength and confidence. You begin to trust yourself and your connection with Allah. Loneliness often comes from comparison. You see others surrounded by people and assume that they are happier. But what you see is not always the full reality. Many people who appear socially connected still feel empty inside. True peace does not come from how many people are around you. When you embrace being alone, you begin to appreciate simple moments. Silence becomes calming instead of uncomfortable. Reflection becomes meaningful instead of overwhelming. This shift transforms your experience of solitude. Being alone also allows you to focus on your personal growth. You have time to improve your habits, strengthen your faith, and work on yourself without distraction. This growth benefits every area of your life. The believer understands that being alone does not mean being abandoned. Allah is always near. When you remember Him, you realize that you are never truly alone. This awareness removes the fear of solitude. Learning to be comfortable alone also improves your relationships. When you are not dependent on people for your happiness, you interact with them in a healthier way. You appreciate them without needing them to complete you. Being alone is not the same as being lonely. When your heart is connected to Allah, solitude becomes a source of peace, strength, and clarity. The believer who understands this begins to see being alone not as a weakness but as a blessing that brings them closer to Allah and closer to themselves. People cannot fulfill every emotional need. Many people move through life believing that someone else will eventually fulfill all their emotional needs. They expect a friend, a partner, or even family members to understand them completely, support them in every moment, and never fall short. But my dear brothers and sisters, this expectation is unrealistic and often becomes the source of deep emotional pain. Human beings are limited. They have their own struggles, their own thoughts, and their own emotional capacity. Expecting them to carry your entire emotional world places a burden on them and creates disappointment within you. When you expect people to fulfill every emotional need, your happiness becomes dependent on their behavior. If they respond the way you hope, you feel calm. If they change, become distant, or fail to understand you, your heart feels heavy. This constant emotional fluctuation can be exhausting. Islam teaches us to place our ultimate reliance on Allah, not on people. When your heart depends on Allah, your peace becomes stable. People can love you sincerely, but they cannot always express that love perfectly. They may misunderstand you, forget important things, or fail to be present when you need them most. This is not always because they do not care, but because they are human. When you accept this reality, your heart becomes more patient and less reactive. Another important truth is that emotional needs are deep and complex. No single person can fully understand everything you feel. Only Allah knows what is hidden within your heart. He understands your silent thoughts, your unspoken worries, and your deepest fears. This is why turning to Allah brings a level of comfort that people cannot provide. Relying too much on people for emotional fulfillment can also create pressure in relationships. When someone feels that they must constantly meet your expectations, it can become overwhelming for them. This pressure may lead to distance or tension. Balanced expectations create healthier and more peaceful relationships. When you begin to rely on Allah for your emotional needs, something changes within you. You still value people and appreciate their presence, but you no longer expect them to complete you. This shift brings emotional freedom and stability. Another beautiful benefit of this understanding is that it reduces overthinking. When you stop expecting people to always respond in a certain way, you stop analyzing their behavior constantly, your mind becomes calmer and your heart becomes lighter. It is also important to develop self-awareness. When you understand your own emotions and learn how to manage them, you become less dependent on others for validation. This independence strengthens your character and builds confidence. Turning to Allah through dua becomes more meaningful when you realize that people cannot fulfill every emotional need. You begin to speak to Him honestly, knowing that He understands you completely. This connection brings deep peace to the heart. When you accept that people are limited, you also become more forgiving. You stop holding them to impossible standards. This forgiveness softens your heart and improves your relationships. You also begin to appreciate what people do give you, instead of focusing on what they cannot provide. This shift from expectation to appreciation brings positivity and balance into your life. People cannot fulfill every emotional need, but Allah can. When you place your reliance on Him, your heart becomes calm, your expectations become balanced, and your relationships become healthier. The believer who understands this lives with a quiet strength, knowing that their true comfort comes from Allah alone. True peace comes from your connection with Allah. Many people spend their lives searching for peace in different places. They look for it in relationships, success, money, or distractions, hoping that something in the world will finally make them feel calm. But my dear brothers and sisters, true peace is not something you find outside. It is something that grows within your heart when it connects to Allah. The heart was created to remember its creator, and when it turns away, it begins to feel restless. No matter how much you gain in this world, without that connection, something will always feel missing. When your connection with Allah becomes strong, your heart begins to feel a calmness that does not depend on circumstances. Life may still bring challenges, but your inner state remains steady. You understand that everything happening around you is part of Allah's plan, and that understanding removes unnecessary fear and anxiety. Peace does not mean a life without problems. It means a heart that trusts Allah through every situation. The remembrance of Allah is one of the greatest sources of inner peace. Simple acts like saying Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah and Astaghfirullah are not just words, they are reminders that bring your heart back to its source. When you remember Allah regularly, your thoughts become calmer and your emotions become more balanced. The noise of the world begins to fade. Another important part of this connection is salah. Prayer is not just an obligation, it is a moment where you stand before Allah and speak to Him. When you pray with presence and sincerity, your heart finds relief. It is a pause from the stress of life and a reminder that Allah is always near. Dua also strengthens this connection. When you raise your hands and speak to Allah, you are expressing your trust in Him. You are placing your worries in His care. This act alone brings comfort because you know that Allah hears you and understands you completely. Many people feel alone even when surrounded by others. This loneliness often comes from a weak connection with Allah. But when you strengthen that connection, you realize that you are never truly alone. Allah is always with you, aware of your situation and ready to guide you. Another beautiful aspect of connecting with Allah is that it brings clarity. When your heart is calm, you begin to see situations more clearly. You make better decisions and avoid unnecessary stress because you trust Allah's guidance. This connection also protects you from emotional instability. When your peace depends on people, it changes with their behavior. But when your peace depends on Allah, it remains steady. This stability is a great blessing. Gratitude naturally grows when your connection with Allah becomes stronger. You begin to see the blessings in your life more clearly and appreciate what you have. This gratitude increases your peace and contentment. Trusting Allah is a key part of this connection. When you trust Him, you stop worrying excessively about the future. You understand that whatever happens is by His will and carries wisdom. Your connection with Allah also helps you let go of what is not meant for you. Instead of holding on to things that cause pain, you accept Allah's plan and move forward with a calm heart. True peace comes from your connection with Allah. The believer who strengthens this connection finds a calmness that nothing in this world can replace. When your heart is close to Allah, you experience a peace that remains with you through every situation, guiding you, protecting you, and bringing comfort to your soul. Silence helps you understand yourself better. In a world filled with constant noise, silence has become rare, yet it is one of the most powerful tools for self-understanding. My dear brothers and sisters, when you are always surrounded by conversations, distractions and opinions, you lose the ability to hear your own thoughts clearly. Silence gives your mind the space it needs to slow down. It allows your heart to reflect instead of react. When you step away from noise, you begin to notice what is truly happening within you. And that awareness is the beginning of growth. Many people are uncomfortable with silence because it brings them face to face with their thoughts. When distractions disappear, emotions that were hidden begin to surface. But this is not something to fear. It is an opportunity. Silence allows you to understand your fears, your worries, and your intentions. It reveals what you have been ignoring. Instead of running away from these feelings, facing them brings clarity and strength. Silence also helps you become more aware of your intentions. In the busyness of life, it is easy to act without reflection. You make decisions quickly, often influenced by emotions or external pressure. But when you spend time in silence, you begin to question your actions. Why am I doing this? What is my purpose? This awareness helps you align your actions with sincerity and faith. Another important benefit of silence is that it strengthens your connection with Allah. When you remove distractions, your heart becomes more present. You begin to remember Allah more deeply and your dua becomes more sincere. Silence creates a space where your relationship with Allah can grow without interruption. The quiet moments also help reduce overthinking. When your mind is constantly filled with information and stimulation, your thoughts become scattered. But silence brings focus. It allows your thoughts to settle, making it easier to process what truly matters. Silence teaches patience as well. When you are not constantly reacting to every situation, you learn to pause and think before responding. This patience improves your behavior and helps you handle situations with wisdom. Another beautiful aspect of silence is that it increases emotional awareness. You begin to notice patterns in your feelings. You understand what triggers your stress or sadness. This awareness helps you manage your emotions better. Silence also protects you from unnecessary conflict. When you speak less, you avoid saying things you may later regret. You learn to choose your words carefully, which strengthens your relationships. It also allows you to focus on personal growth without constant distraction. You have the time and mental clarity to work on yourself. You can reflect on your habits, your goals, and your spiritual state. Being comfortable in silence also reduces your dependence on others for distraction. Many people constantly seek company because they are afraid of being alone with their thoughts. But when you embrace silence, you become comfortable with yourself. Silence also increases gratitude. When you pause and reflect, you begin to notice blessings that you may have overlooked in the noise of daily life. This awareness brings peace and contentment. Silence truly helps you understand yourself better. The believer who takes time to step away from noise and reflect will find clarity, emotional strength, and a deeper connection with Allah. In that quiet space, you discover not only who you are, but who you are becoming. Detachment protects your heart from pain. Many of the deepest pains people carry are not always caused by others, but by how strongly their hearts are attached to them. When your heart becomes overly attached, every small change feels like a loss. My dear brothers and sisters, detachment does not mean you stop caring about people. It means you stop placing your peace in their hands. When you detach in a healthy way, you protect your heart from unnecessary pain and emotional instability. Attachment often creates expectations, and expectations lead to disappointment. You begin to expect constant attention, understanding, and emotional consistency from people. But human beings are not perfect. They forget, they change, and sometimes they fall short. When your heart depends on these expectations, every unmet expectation becomes a source of pain. Detachment removes this pressure and brings emotional relief. When you learn to detach, you begin to accept people as they are, not as you want them to be. This acceptance reduces frustration and helps you see situations more clearly. You no longer feel the need to control how others behave. Instead, you focus on maintaining your own peace. Detachment also protects your emotional energy. When you are too attached, you spend a lot of time overthinking. You analyze people's words, their actions, and their intentions. This constant thinking drains your energy. But when you detach, your mind becomes calmer because you stop trying to control what is beyond you. Another important benefit of detachment is that it strengthens your relationship with Allah. When you stop relying on people for emotional fulfillment, you naturally turn to Allah more. You make more dua, seek more guidance, and find comfort in His remembrance. Detachment also helps you set healthy boundaries. You begin to recognize what behavior you should accept and what you should not tolerate. This protects your self-respect and prevents others from taking advantage of your kindness. It is important to understand that detachment is not about becoming cold or distant. You can still love people, care for them, and support them, but you do so without losing yourself in them. This balance allows you to maintain both compassion and strength. Detachment also reduces emotional dependency. When your happiness is not tied to people, your mood becomes more stable. You are not easily affected by how others treat you. This stability brings inner peace. Another beautiful outcome of detachment is that it allows you to heal. When you are not constantly holding on to people or situations that hurt you, your heart has the space to recover. Healing becomes easier when you let go. Detachment also changes your perspective. Instead of seeing loss as something negative, you begin to see it as part of Allah's plan. What leaves your life may be making space for something better. The believer understands that true attachment should only be to Allah. Everything else in life is temporary. When your heart is connected to Allah, you find a stability that cannot be shaken. Detachment protects your heart from pain by freeing it from unnecessary emotional weight. When you rely on Allah instead of people, your heart becomes calm, strong, and balanced. This is the kind of peace that remains with you, no matter what changes around you. When a person begins to practice detachment sincerely, they notice a gradual shift in how they experience life. Situations that once caused deep emotional reactions begin to feel lighter. My dear brothers and sisters, this is not because life becomes easier, but because your heart becomes stronger. Detachment allows you to step back and observe rather than immediately react. You begin to understand that not everything deserves your emotional energy, and this understanding protects your inner peace. One of the greatest benefits of detachment is that it helps you break unhealthy emotional patterns. Sometimes people become attached to situations or individuals that repeatedly hurt them. They stay, hoping things will change, even when the pattern continues. Detachment gives you the clarity to recognize these patterns and the strength to step away when necessary. This protects your heart from repeated pain. Detachment also teaches you to accept reality instead of resisting it. When something does not go the way you hoped, attachment makes you hold on tightly, refusing to let go. This creates frustration and emotional struggle. But when you detach, you accept that Allah's plan is always wiser than your expectations. This acceptance brings calmness. Another important lesson is that detachment helps you focus on what you can control. You cannot control how others feel, think, or behave. But you can control your reactions, your intentions, and your actions. Detachment shifts your focus from external factors to internal growth. It also reduces the fear of loss. When you are overly attached, the thought of losing someone or something creates anxiety. But when you detach, you understand that everything in life is temporary. This understanding removes fear and replaces it with trust in Allah. Detachment strengthens your independence. You learn how to stand on your own emotionally. You do not need constant reassurance from others to feel okay. This independence builds confidence and inner strength. Another beautiful aspect of detachment is that it brings clarity to relationships. You begin to see people for who they truly are, not for who you hoped they would be. This clarity allows you to make better decisions about who you keep close and who you distance yourself from. Detachment also encourages sincerity. When you are not attached to outcomes, you do good for the sake of Allah alone. You help others without expecting anything in return. This sincerity purifies your intentions and brings greater reward. It also helps you let go of past pain. Holding on to past hurt keeps the wound alive, but detachment allows you to release that pain and move forward. You understand that what happened was part of Allah's plan and you trust His wisdom. Detachment also improves your mental clarity. When your mind is not constantly focused on others, you have more space to think, reflect, and grow. This clarity allows you to focus on your goals and your relationship with Allah. Another benefit is emotional balance. You are no longer affected by every small change in people's behavior. Your emotions become more stable because your peace is not tied to others. Detachment protects your heart from pain by giving it strength, clarity, and independence. When you rely on Allah and let go of excessive attachment, your heart becomes calm and resilient. This is the kind of peace that allows you to move through life with quiet strength and trust in Allah's perfect plan. The less you depend on people, the stronger you become. Many people do not realize how much of their emotional weakness comes from depending too much on others. When your happiness, confidence, and peace are tied to people, you become vulnerable to their actions. If they are present, you feel strong, and if they are distant, you feel weak. My dear brothers and sisters, true strength begins when you reduce this dependence. The less you rely on people to feel complete, the more stable and strong your heart becomes. You begin to stand on your own, supported by your connection with Allah. Depending too much on people often leads to disappointment. You expect them to understand you, support you, and stay consistent, but human beings are limited. When they fail to meet your expectations, your heart feels hurt. But when you reduce your dependence, you begin to accept people as they are. This acceptance protects your emotions and builds inner strength. When you depend less on people, you learn to manage your own emotions. Instead of looking for someone to calm you down or validate your feelings, you turn inward and reflect. This self-awareness helps you understand your emotions better and respond to them with wisdom rather than reaction. Another important benefit is that you become more confident in yourself. You no longer need constant approval to feel worthy. Your sense of value comes from within, supported by your relationship with Allah. This confidence allows you to move through life with stability. Reducing dependence also strengthens your relationship with Allah. When you stop expecting people to fulfill your needs, you naturally turn to Allah more. You make more dua, seek guidance, and find comfort in His remembrance. This connection becomes your source of strength. It also reduces overthinking. When you are dependent on people, you constantly analyze their behavior and worry about their opinions. But when you depend less on them, your mind becomes calmer. You focus more on your own actions and less on others. Another beautiful aspect is that it gives you emotional freedom. You are no longer controlled by how others treat you. Your mood does not rise and fall based on their attention or approval. This freedom brings peace and stability. When you depend less on people, your relationships improve. You interact with others without placing heavy expectations on them. This creates healthier and more balanced connections where appreciation replaces pressure. It also helps you handle rejection better. When your worth is not tied to others, rejection does not break you. You understand that it is part of life and does not define your value. This understanding builds resilience. Another benefit is that it encourages personal growth. Instead of relying on others, you focus on improving yourself. You develop skills, strengthen your character, and grow spiritually. This growth makes you stronger over time. The believer understands that true reliance should be on Allah alone. People are a part of your life, but they are not your source of strength. When you depend on Allah, you find a stability that cannot be shaken. The less you depend on people, the stronger you become. When your heart is rooted in Allah and not in others, you develop a quiet strength that carries you through every situation. This strength allows you to live with confidence, peace, and trust in Allah's plan. When a person begins to reduce their dependence on people, they start to notice a powerful change within themselves. Situations that once caused emotional instability no longer have the same effect. My dear brothers and sisters, this is because your heart is no longer tied to external validation. You are not constantly waiting for others to approve of you, support you, or understand you. Instead, you begin to rely on your own strength and your connection with Allah. This shift creates a calm confidence that cannot be easily shaken. Another important outcome of reducing dependence on people is that it removes unnecessary pressure from your life. When you expect others to always be there for you, you place a burden on both them and yourself. But when you rely less on people, you allow relationships to exist in a more natural and peaceful way. You appreciate others without expecting them to carry your emotional weight. This independence also helps you make better decisions. When you are overly dependent on others, you may make choices based on their opinions rather than your own understanding. But when you become stronger within yourself, you think clearly and act with confidence. You are guided by your values and your faith, not by external pressure. Reducing dependence also strengthens your patience. When you are not constantly expecting immediate support or attention from others, you learn to wait calmly. You trust that Allah's plan is unfolding in the best way. This patience brings peace to your heart. Another benefit is that it helps you handle silence and solitude. Many people fear being alone because they rely on others for distraction and comfort. But when you become independent, you begin to enjoy your own company. You find peace in quiet moments and use them for reflection and growth. It also increases your emotional intelligence. When you are not focused on what others should do for you, you become more aware of your own thoughts and feelings. This awareness helps you manage your emotions better and respond to situations with wisdom. Reducing dependence on people also protects your self-respect. You are less likely to tolerate behavior that harms you because you are not afraid of losing someone. You understand your worth and maintain your dignity. Another important aspect is that it allows you to give without expecting return. When you are not dependent on others, you help and care for people purely for the sake of Allah. This sincerity purifies your intentions and brings greater reward. This independence also reduces anxiety about relationships. You are not constantly worried about whether people will stay or leave. You accept that everyone's role in your life is temporary, and this acceptance brings calmness. When you depend less on people, you begin to focus more on your purpose. You invest your energy in improving yourself, strengthening your faith, and building a meaningful life. This focus brings direction and clarity. Another beautiful outcome is that you become emotionally stable. Your mood is no longer controlled by others' behavior. You remain calm and balanced regardless of what happens around you. The less you depend on people, the stronger you truly become. The strength is not loud or visible, but it is deeply rooted within your heart. It allows you to move through life with confidence, peace, and trust in Allah, knowing that your true support comes from Him alone. Contentment comes from within, not from others. Many people spend their lives searching for contentment in others, believing that someone's presence, approval, or love will finally make them feel complete. But my dear brothers and sisters, this kind of contentment is temporary. It depends on people, and people are not constant. They change, they become busy, and sometimes they are not able to give you what you expect. True contentment is not something that comes from outside. It grows within your heart when it is connected to Allah. When your heart finds satisfaction in Allah's remembrance, you begin to feel a calmness that does not depend on anyone else. When contentment is tied to people, your emotions become unstable. If someone gives you attention, you feel happy. If they withdraw, you feel empty. This cycle creates emotional dependence and prevents true peace. But when contentment comes from within, your emotional state becomes steady. You no longer rely on others to feel complete, and this brings a deep sense of balance. Contentment begins with acceptance. You accept your life as it is, understanding that everything happening to you is part of Allah's plan. This does not mean you stop striving for improvement, but it means you are at peace with your current situation while working toward better. This balance brings inner calm. Another important aspect of contentment is gratitude. When you focus on what you have instead of what you lack, your perspective changes. You begin to see blessings in your life that you may have overlooked before. Gratitude fills your heart with satisfaction and removes the constant feeling of wanting more. Contentment also protects you from comparison. When you constantly compare your life to others, you begin to feel that you are missing something. But when your contentment comes from within, you stop measuring your life against others. You appreciate your own journey and trust that Allah has given you what is best for you. It is also important to understand that people cannot give you lasting satisfaction. They can support you, care for you, and bring moments of happiness, but they cannot fill the deeper space within your heart. That space is meant for your connection with Allah. When your heart is connected to Allah, you find peace in simple moments. You do not need constant excitement or external validation to feel happy. Your contentment becomes quiet, steady, and lasting. Contentment also reduces overthinking. When you are satisfied with what you have, you stop constantly analyzing what is missing. Your mind becomes calmer and your thoughts become more focused. Another beautiful benefit of contentment is that it strengthens your patience. When things do not go your way, you remain calm because you trust Allah's wisdom. You understand that everything happens at the right time. Contentment also improves your relationships. When you are not expecting others to complete you, you interact with them in a healthier way. You appreciate them without depending on them for your happiness. The believer understands that true contentment is a gift from Allah. It is something that grows through faith, gratitude, and trust. When your heart is connected to Him, you find satisfaction in ways that cannot be explained by worldly measures. Contentment comes from within, not from others. When your heart relies on Allah and not on people, you find a peace that remains through every situation. This inner contentment allows you to live with calmness, strength, and gratitude, knowing that what Allah has given you is always enough. There is a quiet strength that develops within a person when they begin to find contentment from within rather than from others. My dear brothers and sisters, when your heart stops chasing external validation, it begins to settle. You are no longer constantly looking for someone to confirm your worth or to fill an emotional gap. Instead, you begin to feel whole on your own, supported by your connection with Allah. This inner completeness removes the constant feeling of needing more. Many people struggle with dissatisfaction because they are always looking outward. They believe that the next relationship, the next achievement, or the next approval will finally bring them peace. But when that moment arrives, the satisfaction is temporary. Soon after, the feeling fades and the search begins again. This cycle continues until a person realizes that contentment cannot be found in temporary things. It must come from within. Contentment grows when you become comfortable with yourself. When you are able to sit alone without feeling restless, you begin to understand your thoughts and emotions more clearly. This self-awareness helps you accept who you are and where you are in life. Acceptance is a key part of inner peace. Another important aspect is trusting Allah's plan. When you believe that everything in your life is happening with purpose, you stop questioning every outcome. You begin to see delays, changes, and even losses as part of a greater plan. This trust removes frustration and replaces it with calmness. Contentment also teaches you to slow down. In a world that constantly encourages more, faster, and better, contentment allows you to pause. You appreciate the present moment instead of always chasing the future. This awareness brings peace to your heart. It also protects you from emotional exhaustion. When you are constantly depending on others for happiness, your energy becomes drained. But when your contentment is internal, your energy remains balanced. You are not constantly reacting to others. Another beautiful benefit is that it strengthens your gratitude. You begin to notice small blessings that you may have ignored before. A quiet moment, a kind word, or a simple success becomes meaningful. This gratitude fills your heart with peace. Contentment also reduces fear. When you are satisfied with what you have, you are not constantly afraid of losing it. You understand that everything belongs to Allah, and this understanding brings emotional security. It also improves your focus. When your mind is not distracted by what you lack, you can concentrate on what you need to do. This clarity helps you grow and improve in your life. Another important lesson is that contentment brings emotional independence. You are not controlled by people's opinions or actions. Your peace comes from within, and this makes you stronger. Contentment also allows you to give more to others. When you are not empty, you can support and care for people sincerely. Your actions come from a place of strength rather than need. Contentment comes from within, not from others. The believer who understands this begins to live with calmness, strength, and gratitude. When your heart is connected to Allah and satisfied with what He has given you, you experience a peace that remains with you in every situation. My dear brothers and sisters, the moment you learn to be happy alone is the moment your life begins to change. You no longer chase people, and you no longer feel broken by their absence. Instead, you find comfort in your relationship with Allah, the one who understands every silent feeling in your heart. Happiness does not come from having many people around you. It comes from having a heart that is at peace. When you trust Allah and become comfortable with your own company, you gain a strength that no one can take away. Walk your